we've got to invest in community-based legal aid services, not only for the immigrant community, but for everybody in the community. So if you're being challenged, I mean, why should you have to be a rich a commercial investor in order to get somebody to come in and help you on something as simple as property tax appeals? Or how about those who have left the criminal justice system and need legal support?
Thank you. Susana Mendoza.
Thank you. Well, this is an issue that's incredibly personal to me. My parents both came here from Mexico. I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants. And my entire identity essentially has been wrapped around what I can do to make my parents proud and the community that they represent be one that we can walk with our heads up high. Let me just start by saying, factually, 100% immigrants are a net positive to Chicago, to Illinois, and to the world. Our country is better because it was built and founded by the hard work and sweat and tears of immigrants. Now, having said that, under the Trump administration, we have never been worse off. Right now, City Hall has to step up for the immigrant population more than ever before, and we need a leader who will fight for the rights of everyone, regardless of their immigration status, because people come here looking for a better life, and all they're asking for is a chance to be able to contribute to society, not take from. Now, during my time as a legislator, I worked hard on the front lines trying to pass things like all kids for children to be covered with their health care. It saves money for everyone else, whether you see that or not. Investing in people's health care and better outcomes is a good thing for society. I led the charge on licenses for undocumented immigrants. Why? Because it keeps our streets safer. And I will promise you that I will advocate for the empowerment of people who look like me and those who don't, because we are all in this city together. Lastly, I want to send a message to Donald Trump. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. El que se va eres tú.
Bob, if you're ready.
I don't know if I should say anything after that. First of all, I do want to say we need to treat people fairly. I'm a son of an immigrant. On Sundays at my house down in Roseland, we would have people from all areas of the world, whether they were from Mexico, Italy, Russia, Poland, because my mother would translate letters back and forth. And so I developed an inclusive identity then. We had a lot of people that would come to our house on Sundays as my mom would translate those letters. And it made me feel that we have to fight for people. That's why I became a civil rights lawyer. My parents told me we need to get a good education, work hard, give back to the communities. What do immigrants do? They want a good education. They want to make sure that they have their kids working hard. And at the same time, I've never seen so many people give back to the community than immigrants. They keep fighting for us. We need to fight for them. And that's what this is all about, as we move forward and we move this city forward. Because without an all-inclusive way, we're going to be failing as a city, and that's why people are leaving in droves. Thank you.
Gary McCarthy.
Muchas gracias, Susana. Soy nacido en el Bronx y puedo hablar español también. Eso es muy importante. For the life of me, I can't imagine how we got to this place. What happened to the inscription on the Statue of Liberty that says, "Give us your poor, tired, huddled masses"? My grandfather was undocumented. My grandfather was undocumented. He had to leave Ireland with the price on his head during what we call the Troubles in the Irish history. It's not illegal to be undocumented. However, we should make an effort to become documented, and we need a process that's going to facilitate that by our government for the individuals who want to come and stay here. I helped write the policy for Major City Chiefs Association on immigration, and it goes like this. We don't want to protect criminals. So if you are arrested and convicted of a felony and you're undocumented, you should do your time and get sent back out of this country. But at the same time, being undocumented should not be reported to ICE by municipal police departments. We've got plenty of work to do for ourselves. We don't need to do their work for them. At the end of the day, We need a process here that recognizes we are a country of immigrants. Nobody.
Time. Thank you. Bill Daley.
Thank you. There is no, I've lived my entire life in this city. There is no one in this city that does not have an ancestor who has come to this country in this city or has come from another country into this city. So the vibrancy of this city, the history of this city is totally about people from around the world who've come to make this a great city. And we must continue the welcoming ordinance, Sanctuary City, which started in the early 80s, and I'm very proud of the fact that my brother for many years stood up to many people who wanted him to change that. He didn't. It is the vibrancy of this city. That's one of the reasons, quite frankly, that I'm against the elected school board. I think one of the main reasons, because we have lots of people who are non-citizens in this city whose kids are in the school system and they could not participate in that election. I sit and laid out a program so that the local school councils or neighborhood school councils where non-citizens can participate would tee up people to the mayor that have to be put on the school board. That's what I feel about this issue, and I think it starts from the top. The people have to believe that you are sincere about the need to continue to make this an open city, especially to the refugees from around the world who are trying to get to this country and do come to this country. We have to tell them we want them here. They will make our city a better city.
Willie Wilson.
First of all, I believe that all mankind should be created equal. Number one. The other thing this year is that we talk about people who's not citizen, but what about also as well at the people who are citizen, who's locked up in Cook County Jail, who's in there for misdemeanor nonviolent, who when they get out cannot get their record expunged. We are not free ourselves. How can we gotta do this thing together? And the people who talking this talk up here and out there too, if the plain known is faking this whole mess, okay? If you believe in something, you start at home, you start dealing with it now. How can you get freedom when they take the taxpayer dollars out of a certain community and don't put it and put it in other communities? And we starve to death. How can you talk freedom and right when they come in certain communities and give tickets for people of color riding bicycles? How can you talk about this stuff when you put red light cameras into the community? I'm gonna get rid of them jokers out of here, all right?
Lord, over my card.
Thank you.
There you go, thanks.
Now we're going to move to the final question, which is perhaps the most pressing question facing Chicago neighborhoods today. It's about public safety and policing. Chicago has one of the lowest homicide clearance rates in the U.S. The trust between communities of color and the police has broken down. There are plans for a court order that establishes an enforceable plan for reform within the Chicago Police Department. Many institutions are responsible for ensuring that this proposed police reform consent decree becomes a reality. As mayor, how will your administration work with the city council and other partners to restore trust, accountability, and fairness for all Chicagoans for whom the police work, while also increasing police effectiveness? And we're going to start this round with John Kozlar.
Yeah, so the big thing about electing new people is that they then come up with new solutions. So the issue in Chicago is that the communities and the police department are simply not seeing eye to eye, and there's a lot of tension going on. So my specific plan is a 60-40 plan. So in order to police in that district, 60% of the police officers have to live there. So now they're seen not as outsiders, they're seen as community members. They're going to know the blocks, they're going to know the neighbors, they're going to know their neighborhood. And now they're going to treat people fairly. And they're going to be investing in the community because they're growing up their families there. So it's a 60-40 plan. In order to police that district, 60% of police officers have to live there. The other thing is, we have to let the police do their job. For too long, we've been putting a target on the police backs, and the police department is a great department. There are some bad apples, and we have to hold those bad apples accountable. But we should not have a broad brush of saying, hey, because an individual chose to be bad, that the whole department is bad. That's not right. The police officers do a very, very good job, and we need to support them. And in order to reduce that tension, the 60-40 plan will work. It's just we have to come up with new ideas. In order to do that, we have to elect new people.
Paul Vallis.
Yes. Well, first of all, there's no substitution to creating economic conditions that will get at the root causes of crime. But that's said and done. Do not underestimate the degree to which this police department has been degraded. Not filling close to 2,000 vacancies, allowing the detectives division to be gutted almost in half. You wonder why the homicide clearance rates plummeted, going to a 1 to 10 to a 1 to 30 sergeant ratio. That's accountability you can believe in. At the end of the day, or the lack of training, the 80% of the stuff in the consent decree is common sense stuff. Training, equipment, tasers, etc. The night Laquan McDonald was killed, the city had 500 tasers. New York had 15,000. So at the end of the day, we have got to rebuild the police department and create an infrastructure of accountability. That means filling the vacancies so we have beat integrity, so you have officers working their communities, not being shifted all over the city. That we have enough detectives. That means not only filling the detective ranks, but bringing retired detectives in, as they've done in other cities, so they can work those cases. That means having enough sergeants and training officers monitoring the officers, and that means having redundant training. And finally, it means recruiting the next generation of police officers from the community. We have 10,000 kids in ROTC programs in the Chicago Public Schools, in military academies that Gary Chico and I created. 90% are black and Latino. You want to transform the police department? Let the next generation of cops come from the community.
Amara Enya.
The city in the future will pay $1.7 billion because of a refusal to implement the necessary reforms. The consent decree is necessary because we've demonstrated that we cannot be trusted, the police department cannot be trusted to implement those reforms. I want to lift up CPAC as well as the coalition of organizations around GAPA who has spent months and months putting together viable plans because of the lack of responsiveness and accountability to community. You cannot build trust where there's no relationship. You cannot build trust where there's no legitimacy, and you certainly cannot recruit anyone into a department that lacks legitimacy. Implementing the consent decree is a matter of restoring legitimacy to an institution that has the power to determine life and death in this city. We have to do it. There's no question about it. Secondly, we can't just rely on police. Yes, we must address the root causes of violence, which is our public policy failings across the board. When city government does their job, it actually makes the job of police officers easier. Third, in our communities, we have blocks. And on those blocks, we should have block clubs that are funded and supported so that they can institutionally monitor themselves. We should not have to rely on police officers flooding our neighborhoods when we can actually invest in infrastructure to do that. Perhaps by taking some of the investment that goes into the police budget and actually restoring caps or funding those block clubs themselves in our hardest hit neighborhoods. Working with police is not a one-sided thing. We have to build strong institutions in our neighborhoods first.
Bob Fioretti.
Thank you. You know, sometimes when we talk about complex questions, policing in our neighborhoods is not a single solution. We need good police officers. We need a professional superintendent. That's been the problem. That's always been the problem for the last 20 plus years. We need somebody that can make sure that we have proper training, hiring, training, supervision, and discipline. If we don't have that, then we might as well all go home or leave the city. Because that is the core of what we need to do. You know, at the same time, we need to hire the number of police officers. I'm glad that many of the candidates have said, let's hire from our neighborhoods. I was a big proponent of that. I was a proponent of diversity in our police department, and I was told by my colleagues, oh, you can't be saying that. I said, I'm going to continue saying that. At the same time, we need to open up our mental health clinics. I'm not criminalizing the issue, but what they need and we need it all. And at the same time, we've had five suicides in this, of police officers since July. They need help too. You know, we got to look at what we're doing and why such a high suicide rate. Yes, and we had 4 officers killed within the last year. We need to work together, and that's how we're going to create the problems in trust and solve the problem of trust.
Lori Lightfoot.
Since Rahm Emanuel was sworn in mayor in 2011, we've had 23,000 people shot in the city. That is a devastating number, and it speaks volumes about the lack of leadership. And part of that is because he learned on the job about safety and public trust and local policing. We cannot afford to make that mistake twice. So one of the things you can do is check out who on this stage actually has experience in fighting crime and police reform and accountability. And I think you're going to come to the conclusion that I am the right candidate to lead this city forward. Violence is an issue that determines who stays, who goes, who's invested, and we've got to get it right. The fact that we have a homicide clearance rate in 2017 of 17%, and if you had the audacity to live in the single digits, it's not just statistics, it's about how we speak our values. We're saying to the victims, there's no justice for you, and we're saying to the killers, you can walk free with impunity. I'm the candidate here on this platform, in this race, who's been working diligently on police reform and accountability that became the underpinnings of the Obama Department of Justice report and will be part of the consent decree going forward. I don't need to learn on the job. I will start day one to make this city safe, bring communities together, because it's essential to building a strong Chicago.
Dorothy Brown.
You know, Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And the distrust that's in our communities between police officers and the community has a lot to do with the fact that there are 30,000 complaints against the police department, but only 2% were sustained. There's over $600 million in settlements for police misconduct. That has to change. But I'm going to deal with criminal misconduct. First of all, from that standpoint, we're going to make sure that our schools and economic development and that our people have jobs. They have alternatives to crime. And then we're going to deal with police misconduct. We're going to overhaul the Chicago Police Department, starting from the top to the bottom. And we're going to make sure that we have the right number of police districts. We're going to make sure that we have the right proportionality of supervisors to patrolmen. That the detectives, that they are using 21st century policing strategies to actually investigate crime. I'm going to bring in a panel of experts, of law enforcement experts. I don't purport to be a law enforcement expert, but I'm going to bring in a panel of experts to overhaul the Chicago Police Department in its entirety so that we can ensure that we have everything that the consent decree says. Training and development, health and wellness of the police officers, community